here's why the Great Resignation may finally be over. If you have a job, you've probably quit a job at one point in time. In 2020, 35.9 million Americans quit their jobs. In 2021, this number jumped 33%, up to 47 million. Professor Anthony Klotz labeled this trend the Great Resignation. And then this trend just kinda kept on trending. In 2022, a record-breaking 50.6 million people quit their jobs. Now Klotz himself says the Great Resignation is finally over, and for good reason. The quit rate, which measures the percentage of workers who quit during a given month, was 2.4% in June 2019. It peaked to 3% in November 2021, and it was back down to 2.4% in June 2023. Klotz tells me that the biggest drivers of the Great Resignation, including workers leaving their jobs because they're burned out, or want to work from home, or had pandemic-related epiphanies that inspired them to follow their passions, have mostly subsided, but others aren't so sure that workers won't quit their jobs again soon. Here's why the Great Resignation is the trend that just won't quit. At the beginning of 2023, inflation skyrocketed, and economists warned that we could go into a recession. Many assumed that this more precarious economic outlook would bring resignation levels back to pre-pandemic norms, that people would stay at their jobs out of economic fear. But this didn't really happen in the first half of the year. Inflation actually incentivized many workers to look for higher paying jobs in 2023. Bankrate analyst Sarah Foster told Fast Company writer Jerry Linson in June that inflation is, quote, inspiring workers to ask for higher pay because wages are not keeping up. Plus, the labor market remains surprisingly stable this year. Unemployment still hovers around historic lows. Workers still have options, so they're not afraid of quitting if they really want to. Another reason it may seem like the Great Resignation hasn't fully ended is because workers still want more. LinkedIn estimates that 61% of US workers are considering leaving their jobs in 2023. And a recent survey from FlexJobs found that 62% of workers are actively thinking about quitting their jobs or have recently quit. At the beginning of the pandemic in 2020, companies laid off tens of millions of workers, and I simply do not believe that they will ever trust their employers the same way again. And behavioral scientist Laurel McKenzie points out that this era of workers staying at companies for decades was dying long before the pandemic began. Quote, "It's a new culture of work. No one is staying at organizations for years and years," she tells me. The new culture of work is that people are willing to leave to find something that's better. There's not a sense of loyalty to organizations anymore. People are more focused on taking care of themselves and finding organizations that will enable that. So maybe the Great Resignation isn't over because it wasn't a trend, it was a shift. Klotz adds that the quit rate has been steadily rising for decades. At the time, 2019 was a record-breaking year for quitters. It may not be as catchy as the Great Resignation, but long live the resignation.